Peace, blessings, and elevation. We will bring you inspiring stories, expert insight, and practical tools and information to support you. Types in embracing our authentic selves, we can pave the way for a brighter future for ourselves and our children. Power, heal, and support fathers and men on their journey. I'm your host, Kelly Little, aka the Village King. Welcome to the Father's Haven. Peace, power, and welcome to another episode of the Father's Haven, where today our special guest is Paul. Paul, I want you to first orient the people to all amazing work you do as a speaker, as an employee of a call to men, really equalizing how we show up as men, as fathers, holistically, creating balance, the violence prevention work that you've done over the years, and then a little bit about your organization and what you do, particularly as a man, as a father, as a significant other, to add value to your family, thus empowering your community to show up as men show up with ethics, morals, standards, discipline, commitment, and community. And so I want you to tell them a little bit about Paul that a resume, that a bio will never tell them.
That was beautiful, man. Kelly, I just want to thank you for the invite, brother. I know we were able to partner in some amazing work here at A Call to Men. And, we're just building on that relationship, as we, hold arms in uplifting young men in their walk as fathers, as mentors, as coaches, as educators. It's important, right? So my background, of course, is in athletics, man. Like most of us, we hung, really close to, whether it's basketball, whether it's football. We spent our time on the field, on the court, and I'm originally from New Jersey, right? So I went to one of the top high schools in New Jersey, St. Patrick's, with Al Harrington, Kyrie was out of there and some other great guys. But I wasn't that great at basketball. I ain't gonna lie to you. I ain't gonna lie. So I ended up moving to Maryland. And in Maryland, that's when I started playing football. And from there, I got a scholarship to go to Duquesne University, where I had a great career. And that, propelled me into a world of athletics, both coaching, playing. I had some professional stints within the Arena Football League. And, those things helped shape me. I learned a lot. I built a great brotherhood, but, this understanding of developing men, how I was developed in sports, stuck with me, right? So along my line of coaching, I wanted to add some of that. I wanted to add some of those life lessons. I wanted to give them, prepare them for what was after the game ended, right? And it propelled me into a player development role. And in that role, we brought in a violence prevention program, and it started to talk more about domestic violence and sexual assault. And it piqued my interest. I was like, wow, I never knew all of these things. So as I wanted to really work on character of young men, I couldn't really address what I wanted to address unless I, spent some time really getting better at understanding this domestic violence, sexual assault piece. In that time in doing that, I met a great man by the name of Tony Porter. I was hosting an event for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and he was the keynote speaker. We began talking, and a couple years later, he put me on the road. Like, I'm gonna see what you got, young man. Started talking to some college teams, and then from there, he hired me full time, right? And at A Call to Men, it's been in existence for 20 years, founded by Tony Porter and Ted Bunch out of New York. And it's more than a domestic violence, sexual assault prevention agency. It's bigger than that, right? As we tackle race and the intersectionalities between so many different things, race, class, sex, all of those things, right? It's really based around engaging men, on what we call healthy manhood, right? It's challenging all the different things that we learn, some good and some bad, and how that portrays, how that affects not only us, but our relationships, the women in our lives, women and girls in our lives. And we were able to connect through the program that we have, the Healthy Masculinity Project, where we were able to talk to young guys around this live respect curriculum that we have at A Call to Men. So it's been a phenomenal decade, I want to say, and really being able, yeah, we work with the NFL, we work with a lot of professional sports, collegiate sports, but really when we break it down, all those young men are the same. Those boys, those middle school boys, high school age boys, if we can start having the conversation early around what it means to be uh, healthy in your relationship, right? Because we talk about relationships, but we don't really talk about it in a healthy way. So, really having those candid conversations, breaking down where we got some of the training that we have around how we view women, how we talk to women, how we're in relationship with women and girls, right? And really break it down in a way that they understand, right? So that's been a majority of my work over the last decade. I've been with A Call to Men full time for about 3 years, and I hope to keep it going, keep building, make more people aware. And as a father, has helped me. As a husband, has helped me. As a community member, has helped me. And really, and I know you can advocate for this. When you're a dad, man, you're a dad to everybody in the community, right? All those kids are our kids, right? And we really want to see them be successful. And I think that interest and that love that we have, it supersedes our own kids, right? It pours back into the community, it pours into our relationships, so on and so forth.
I love what you shared, and where I want to pause this for a second because, to your point, you've done some amazing work with A Call to Men. However, when I think, particularly inner city kids growing up, navigating certain spaces, for many of us, sometimes our first true connection with creating this place of refuge or sanctuary for men, fathers, or developing young men into becoming men, as you talked about from a foundational standpoint, was how you navigated and how your relation in sports and relationships in sports
Mm-hmm.
has helped to really create the person who you are because you continue to grow in that. So, can you talk to me a little bit about the relationships with you and your coaches,
Mm-hmm.
your relationship as a coach? Because as you just mentioned,
Yeah.
father, and I'm thinking father from the biological sense, and I'm also thinking father from the community sense. Then
Right.
I think father from the spiritual father, and
Mm-hmm.
you just touched on a concept that I call the adoptive father, because as fathers, we have children, whether it's a son or a daughter, but then they have friends. And so we father those kids and we father the community kids. So, how has your relationship through sports
Mm-hmm.
helped to, one, whether you receive many lessons from your coaches and what you gave or given back to the sports arena, how it's helped you with the greater United States?
Yeah, man. Listen, I realized this while I was coaching in college that coaches can make or break a young man. They can either help you really, be the best you can be, or they can take the love of the game away from you,
Mm.
And I had a phenomenal high school coach that believed in me, right? And I think we don't emphasize that word. We need people to believe in us,
Mm-hmm.
right? People that really, I see something in you. You know what I mean? And he believed in me, man. He made me believe that I could, get a college scholarship, right? And he helped me to that, right? And he helped me with that process. And in that, I realized, like, man, it was something so special in that. And not that he did anything extraordinary, but he gave me that belief that I could do it. So I thought that was phenomenal. And then unfortunately the hard side of coaching is when you lose a player, right? And when I first started coaching, when I stopped playing football, I was coaching little league. You know, we all out there with the pups. You know, I think I had sixth graders. And you know, fast forward, I think about 10 years later, not even 10 years, about 7 years later, um, I get a call from the head coach I was coaching with in little league at the time. I was coaching in college, and he's like, "Hey man, you remember? It was like the smallest kid on our team, but he had the he had the most heart." He's like, "Yeah man, he just got arrested." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah man, he got into an altercation, something happened, and he just got arrested." And that shifted that made a shift in me. That really helped me understand that it can't just be football. It can't just be sport. I could have imparted some wisdom in that young man. I could have told him some things and helped shape his character and his mindset to make better decisions, right? So that's really what propelled me into player development because I knew we spent most of the time off the field, right? Away from the game. So I really wanted to, I never wanted another call like that. I never wanted to say this kid that coach under me was in trouble. I never wanted that. So, you know, a couple years later, after I seen some of my players graduate college, get married, and I'm having conversations with them, man, and they're like, man, it meant so much to me having you as my coach. I learned this from you, man. I learned that from you. And I'm like, man, you can't even put a price on that when you get those calls, when you get those texts and DMs, man, and it really resonated in my soul what I want. And I'm not necessarily doing it for the likes or it's all the conversations you have off the field, all the time you spent with them, really helping them shape them as men that help them when they get older. That's what stuck out for me in coaching and the work we do now. Whether that I'm not a football coach anymore, but again, we still coaching. We're still adopted fathers, and really helping shape those young men. There's something special about that.
Look, so as you was talking, the first thing that set with me and resonated was one, your passion. And again, when you take certain young men, some young men may have had their father in their life,
Mm-hmm.
but for that young man or young men who didn't, as we're talking about sports in this moment, but a lot of times how you show up for people, period, it may not even be the young man. It may be the young man's sister who may have a problem, and you may provide some inspiration, some hope, because all we have in this world is hope. And in doing so, to your point, when we give hope, what we do is we open the door to the imagination to understand the infinite possibilities that will exist for them. Because regardless of how tough it gets, I know I can reach out to Coach Paul because he's going to be authentic. He's going to provide fatherly advice. So essentially, what you just provided was a sanctuary for them to take off the pads, to take off the helmet, to take off the cleats, and allow themselves to be vulnerable and be brave when they haven't been supported before. And so that support system is paramount to essentially building not just that young man, but or young woman, but every grandchild that they may have 2 generations in the future will be impacted as a result of the exposure and experience that you provided to them. How, when you sit and reflect on that, how does that make you feel, Paul?
I think it's amazing, man, because you spoke to it, and I'm glad, and I always relate to you on that level. The work that we're doing is going to affect their families. It's going to affect their kids. They're going to affect their grandkids down the road as we begin to, sow those seeds in their life and allow those seeds to grow in them. So all of those things I can resonate so much with because that's what we do it for, right? That's what we do it for. We aim for that them to have a better tomorrow, their kids have a better tomorrow, right? And be able to give them all those little nuances that we may have had or may not have had, right? But we see that bright future in them, and if we know we can get them there, then they can pass that along and give it to their kids and their kids' kids.
Look, as we talk about the multiple generations that we have the opportunity to impact, influence, and empower, what's your favorite thing about being a father?
Oh man, being a dad is so unique in a way that um and again, going back to that coach role, right? When the Pittsburgh Steelers lose, they looking at Mike Tomlin, right? When they win, they looking at Mike Tomlin. So it's one of those things where, statistically, that your impact or the way the decisions that you make will move the needle that much further or that much farther behind, right? So it's so impactful watching my kids grow, seeing their report cards, seeing all the good things teachers have to say about them, people in the community have to say about them, and that lets me know that I'm doing something right, right? That lets me know that they're loved, that they're cared for. Even though you love them, you give them your best. But when people are out there telling you, "Hey, man, you got a phenomenal kid, man. He's doing this. He's so this. You got a phenomenal daughter, man. She's doing this." So when I hear that, when I see that, I'm looking at their grades and I'm like, man, my son is reading five grade levels ahead of he's reading on the middle school level, you know, and I'm like, man, this is amazing, So all those different things, I'm like, this is what it's about. Seeing them succeed is what you do it for.
Love it, love it. Now, as we talk about some of the things we love about being a father, just holistic, what would you say is the least favorite thing about being a father to you?
It's a lot of responsibility, right? And I try to understand a lot of different relationships, those that go good, those that go bad, and understand that a shift has to be made, right? It's less about us, it's more about them, right? And that responsibility could either be a burden or it could be something that motivates you, right? So sometimes, we make it the short end of the stick, you know what I mean? But it comes with the job. It comes with the job. And if you understand it, if you embrace it, if you understand your responsibility, you take it as a badge of honor. You wear it, and you do it so that so that they're successful, so that they get a step ahead, where other young people aren't as fortunate, right? Could wake up and see their dad. You know
Right,
what I
right.
mean? Just that alone, that they could wake up and see you, that is a blessing to have that. When they need you, they got you there. And they at a my son plays soccer, my daughter plays volleyball. To have me at the game, that's something I missed. You know what I mean? Even though my father was in my life, and we have our ups and downs in relationships. Your parents split up and stuff of that nature. I missed them at my games. I see all my other friends, their parents there, and you looking in the stands, and you like, I know he ain't coming. You know what I mean? To have me
Mhm.
there, that's to have that support. You talked about it earlier. That support, somebody behind you, somebody that you can count on. That's invaluable, man. So even though it may cost us a little bit, right? Uh, I think it's worth it.
As you was unpackaging that, one of the things that comes to mind for me is, as fathers, sometimes we have to, no, all the time we have to play multiple roles. We're going to encourage, we're going to support, we're going to be at the game. We're going to, well, not where, because everybody don't do this, but as a father, one of the things we should do, we should be reinforcing, letting them know we love them. And you talked about the communication, but then there's the tough things about being a father. Like, okay, I got to discipline you for something else, right? And so when I discipline you, that's, although it's the right thing to do, it doesn't always feel like, it may be hard watching your child struggle through something. This is even beyond the discipline. Because we don't want to save them all the time because their progress sometimes is in their struggle. And you have to watch them navigate through certain things so that they'll develop the confidence that you already have in them. So I bring that to our attention because as a father, it's difficult to balance being consistent and providing the discipline while avoiding enabling. And then lastly, how do I ensure that they understand that I'm doing this from a space of love so that they can grow in to the person whom the creator has created them to be? And it's not that I am, what's the word I want to use? Being inconsiderate of their emotions and feelings in that moment. That's just part of my role. So essentially
No,
what I'm asking is, how do you navigate that?
I mean, I think that's the hardest thing, the words that we have that no. Not that we can't give it to them. It's just, when you map out that vision and you're trying to help them, get to where they're going, there's a lot of things they don't need. There's a lot of places they shouldn't go. Not that they can't go, it's just in our best interest that you can't go, right? Or that you shouldn't go. And those conversations are hard, right? Because as kids, we were there, certain places we wanted to go, certain things we wanted, we felt like we should have, and our parents was like, nah, it's not happening. you know. But in it, I realized you talk about the struggle. You got to let your kids struggle. You got to let your kids figure it out, right? You got to let your kids fail, right? Knowing that I'm gonna be here to catch you, I'm gonna be here to help you navigate that, right? But you have to know that I'm doing it because I can see a little bit further than you.
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
always bring up the analogy: the giraffe can see what the turtle can't see, right? So if I'm the giraffe and I'm looking down and I know you want to go that way, but that's not the best way for you to go. I need you to trust. I'm trying to get that. All my friends, all my other turtles is going that way. No. Listen, I can see what's down there. You don't need to go that way, right? So is that, and you're building trust, right? Even though they don't understand, if they leaning on the fact that I can trust this, I could trust my father, I could trust his judgment, and later on I might understand once I grow. Maybe I'm a baby giraffe. I ain't a tall giraffe, right? Once I get that, once I get up there, then I can start saying, "Oh yeah, he was right." So I rather them not like me in the moment and respect me later on in life than me give them everything that they want and they be resentful that I gave them everything that they want. You know.
Oh man, you dropped like 5 jewels just in that last statement. And here's the beauty though, as men, as fathers, we're providing lessons, helping them to see the world through a different lens. But along that journey, there are critical moments where our child or our children may impart some wisdom, knowledge, and lessons for us, even at a young age. And so, for you, when you get in those spaces, how do you make sure your child knows that, like, hey, you just taught me something in this situation? And I'll shoot a quick example. I remember my daughter one time coming back from a deployment. So I'm re-entering back into this role as a authoritarian, as her father, as her educator, as her nurturer, but I've been gone. And so at the same time, I'm doing work around fatherhood and doing it across the country. And so I say, hey, what kind of father am I? You gotta be careful when you ask children because they're gonna give you a brutally honest answer. So she was like, "Dad, you a great dad. All my friends like you, but when we go to dance, sometimes on the way to dance, you on a phone call doing work, right? And I'm like, she over there on TikTok, Snapchat, and all that. She said, I like it if it's just me and you talking. And so that was a lesson. I was present, but my presence and engagement in that moment wasn't completely there. And so that was a lesson. And I told her, thank you. Even though, like, you know, a week later, she on the phone. I cut my phone off, I set it down, and I am exclusively focused on her, and she on Snapchat. It don't matter. I still didn't cut my phone on anymore. So have there been any moments like that with you where
Oh, they're timeless, man. It's countless amounts of times where that has happened, man. And I know with me, it's usually driving. They'll tell on me all the time. Dad, you always say put on your seatbelt. Dad, you always say don't run red lights. Dad, you know what I mean? They'll be like, hey, mom, guess what Dad did today? I'm like, y'all about to ride with me. But it's just things that we're teaching them. They're also holding us accountable to,
yes.
you know, and, really being, I learned to, as a teacher, you also have to listen. You also have to take in mind, am I modeling what I'm teaching? Right. And I think that's been the biggest thing that stuck out to me. If I'm asking of them something, I also have to hold myself to that same standard. Even though, as a parent, like I said, you're the adult giraffe, right? But certain things, most things you still have to hold that high standard, right? Because they're looking at us. They'll watch us before they listen to us.
Yes.
And with that, they'll hold us accountable. They'll pull that card out. Hey, but you said this, right? So there's a lot of things like that that my kids will point out, even as it comes to using the N word, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll be like, Dad, you said, people shouldn't call me that, but I hear you calling, Uncle Mike that. You know what I mean? So things
Mm-hmm.
like that, where he's like trying to figure out, like, am I supposed to use that word? Am I not supposed to use that word? So it's like, are people supposed to call me that word? Like, how does it work? So things like that where you have to take time and explain, but then you realize, like, man, should I even be saying it? Right? Should I be using it with my boys, and stuff like that? So they make you reflect on your own actions, right?
Oh man, look. So I'm sitting here thinking, as you were sharing that story, it's no different as we grow up and move away from just our children because in our workspace, as we are empowering adults, maybe fathers who have never had their father, in that moment, we are a leader, but we are what I would consider an employment parent or a parent based on our institutional knowledge of a system or institution of how to navigate this space. And so, same way you just said, as we are saying certain things, they're watching to see how we move. And so, you said something was really powerful earlier in terms of they are watching us. And what I'm also reminded of is the fact that every person we meet is both our student and our teacher. It just depends on if we allow them to teach us in that moment, because you can't be a leader if ain't nobody following, right? Um, and so being able to humble ourselves, also give credit where credit is due when our children are sharing things that have been impactful, that we see it, so that they can pass that down to the young people that they interact with, but also build the self confidence, right? And also for us as men, we grew up in the era or a genre where men are not supposed to cry, right? Men are providers and protectors. And those are normally the first two things you'll always hear. But we nurturers, we're educators, we're facilitators, we are empowerers, we are hope dealers, we affirm. So there's so many complexities of who we are as fathers. But with that being said, just in your observation with the many men you have served, what have you seen as one of the most glaring needs that have not been provided for many of the men in terms of creating that haven for a sense of belonging, hope, and so forth?
Even in one of our pillars, man, it's this healing aspect. Most men are hurt,
Mm-hmm.
not healed. We got the scars to prove it, but they're more like wounds that are still there, and then depending on what happens, they can open back up, right? So when our pillars, we hold hope and healing for men, right? Because to grow, to mature, some healing has to happen, right? And we don't really talk about that word healing when we talk about men and boys, right? We just take it on the chin. We just deal with it how we deal with it, right? Whether we form addictions around it, we form vices around it, or whatever happens, we don't focus on that word healing. And I think that was one of the biggest gaps, because as we look at even today, our young men are probably the most disconnected that they've ever been in any generation to other men, right? And we long for that, right? No man can say, I don't long for a relationship, whether that's my homeboy, whether that's my dad, whether that's my coach. I want that type, I want a connection, right? It doesn't, when we talk about connections don't have to be romantic, right? But we just saying, dang, I want to have somebody that's in my corner, that's going to support me, right? And when we look at that, most of that is because we've been hurt. Most of that is because we haven't, because vulnerability is in that wheelhouse when we talk about the man box. In order for me to to really form a connection, I got to get vulnerable a little bit, right? I got to open myself up. So when we look at those things, that's something that sticks out, right? Healing. And you look at a lot of different folks, and I don't know if you taught me this or where I learned this from. Um, Although we don't call men emotional, right? We don't necessarily talk about emotion, but we behave our emotion. Right?
Yes.
It comes out in other ways, right? And we see it in other ways. So when we're looking at that now, when I'm looking, we talk about the iceberg effect and all of those things. Uh, we got to heal as men, right? And we got to be transparent around, the things that have happened to us, and start healing, right? And that can cause a lot of um, positive growth from that healing place. Definitely.
Oh, look. So I'm sitting here thinking and laughing, and only laughing because as we go through this space, you know what? Women are too emotional, right? So the opposite of emotion, supposedly is being impassive, but impassive is really an emotion, right? And as you talked about the healing, the first word we want to talk about all the time is, well, what's their ACE score or ACEs, adverse childhood experiences? Then we mentioned trauma informed, trauma responsive, trauma sensitive. And just as sure as there is um, the sun, the sun has no significance without the moon in darkness, right? And so it's that balance. So if you're going to talk about those trauma pieces, which is the problem, and we're dealing with the symptoms, the solution is the healing. And so if you're not embedding or inculcating the healing in the process, then we just continue to go through this cycle of abuse, pain, trauma. And the moment you introduce healing, demonstrate the healing, show them what vulnerability looks like, what I went through, then you open up the door to create this normal environment for healing to be able to occur. Everything I do is like from a healing centered methodology and to release pain, whatever. And we know horses and animals show it to us all the time. That horse is going, it's letting all that stuff out, or the healing sound of bees. So I'm just glad you brought up that word, healing, which is something I try to introduce in every space with young people. And I always ask them, what are their thoughts around crying and other things? And it's funny, some of the responses you hear that you know didn't come from them initially, but it also level sets the room so I can actually expose them to techniques that allow them to move into their purpose and release that pain from a healing modality. And it's unbelievable in terms of how fast they adapt. And we get in this space and we speak from a space of gratitude first, right? So brain can't do two things at one time. So once you start taking them to this happy space, they kind of stay in that happy space once they feel comfortable enough to release that trauma or that pain. Has that been some of your experience as you walk them through the Live Respect curriculum? And this is because, again, you're training the adults to be able to engage and impact the young people. So you're that intercessor.
Yeah, well, in training men along the lines of this curriculum, it brings a lot of stuff up for them, right?
Yep.
It takes them back to their childhood. It takes them back to things that they didn't learn. It takes them back to, man, I made this decision and I wish I knew this. And if I had this type of teaching, if I was younger, I would have had a better relationship. I would have been able to forgive. So much comes up for them and them just learning this information, right? And
Hmm.
I was listening to something maybe today or yesterday, and it said, unfortunately, within our community, we have a lot of bad information.
Yes.
We have a lot of bad information, and we hold those things to be true, right? And once we learn and unlearn some of the old stuff and process some of that new stuff, we like, man, it opens up a whole nother world to us, you know. And in that, man, it's almost freeing, man. It's freeing in that. Yeah.
It is. And to your point, when you open up that world to them and to people, what you then do is you create a space for all the other things to normalize in those other natural contexts that they already have in their own network, which is powerful. And I mean, I just love when you can turn on a light, watch that light turn on 100 other lights. And what's really interesting is earlier, before we even got into this conversation, we were talking about how trees network, and you will never even see the communication. But it's beautiful to see the communication in men once they move from a space of pain into a space of healing, in spaces where we're supported. Perfect example is it's a completely different conversation when we're in a barbershop. You know what I mean?
100%. Yep.
Um, and so the beauty in that is just amazing. Now, for you, what would you consider your most memorable fatherhood memory, thought, or experience?
Yeah, man. I think, we were talking about this, I think, at a meeting this week. And I said, as a dad, I think that initial birth moment, when you hold your first child and, you're looking at him, man, and you like, I'll get a world to you, you know? And it brought something out of me. It shifted a lot within me on making sure I got it right. Now I know I ain't gonna be perfect, but making sure that I do enough, that I grow enough, that you have the life that you deserve, right? And in that might have been my most memorable moment, is just holding my daughter when she was first born, and really, just promising that you're gonna get the best of me,
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what happened in the past, you're gonna get the best of me, right? And knowing that, again, I'm not perfect, but knowing that I'm gonna grow so that you have a better tomorrow.
Nice. Um, what's your greatest fear as a father?
As a father, man, I think I worry sometimes around if not that I work too much, but that I didn't spend enough quality time, that I didn't impart the wisdom that I've learned over the years to you. And I have a lot of candid conversations with my kids, but it's like I don't want to make it all about money. I know money is necessary, uh, but I want them to know undoubtedly that I love them, and they know I love them, but that I prepared them, you know, and imparted that wisdom in them. So when they go into their, relationships, and when they get married and so on and so forth, those things happen for them. They go out into the world to, do business, so on and so forth, or, you know, that they can't say, I never want them to say my father wasn't there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I never wanted to just be like, oh, I'm on the road. I gotta da, 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 I gotta get this. I got that. Man, he cared more about this than me. So um, sometimes you worry about that. Sometimes you worry, that am I doing so much for others that my kids feel like I ain't there for them. You know. It's a tough, yeah, because it's so you love people. You want to make sure all them young kids is cared for and that they have what they have, but you don't want your own kids to feel like you giving it to them and not to me.
Oh, you know what? That's a whole one to unpack it. So since you went there, I love that because here's the thing. Sometimes what I feel like we forget is that the greatest lesson that we can give someone else is our example. And back to what you said earlier, how are you modeling what we're facilitating, moderating, or teaching? And through the example of having great relationships with our child, our children, it then transfers into what the community will then begin to mimic, what our children will begin to mimic. And if we don't successfully do it, that's where, like, sometimes you'll see behavior shift, you'll see attention seeking behavior. So the fact that that's something that you think about, it allows you to keep that balance in place, right? And sometimes uh, we people please because it was something missing for us, and we don't want somebody else to feel certain things that we may have felt, right? Or as a parent, or as just as a generally good person, you want to make sure that people have every opportunity. Which, back to earlier, like that struggle piece. I don't want my child to struggle like me, but look how amazing Paul turned out. So I do want my child to struggle like Paul because that helped Paul to develop into the man he developed into, which I just would do it with like you do. I'm going to give them lessons along the way because we run from failure. However, many successful people understand that the importance of failing is teaching the lesson or allowing them to learn the lesson so they don't repeat the lesson.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's valuable. And I sometimes I wonder that, right? I wonder, um, did my lack help me to build um, the vast quantity of knowledge and information and wisdom that I have today in my lack,
Mm-hmm.
right? And now that they don't have that same lack, right? Are they still can I because I can still teach them the lessons, but they're not. I'm teaching them from a framework because sometimes as a teacher, the different levels of learning, right?
Right.
And for me, I got to learn it hands on. You know what I mean? That's just me, right? So it's like, yeah, I'm telling them and I'm saying it, but in learning their learning style, I'm like, I know my son, he probably gonna have to go through it,
Mm-hmm.
for him to get it, because it doesn't have that same weight when I'm saying it, I'm teaching it, but I'm like, so in it, especially within sports, I learned so many lessons in that. You gotta let them get out there, man, and get their cleats dirty, you know, because I can't save you in sports.
Right.
You're gonna get the results or the work you put in, so all those things matter, right? When we're talking about helping them become themselves, right, and grow. And one of the biggest things I like about sports ain't about them being pros, ain't about them, getting college scholarships. It's really about development,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're learning yourself, and you have to grow to stay in the sport, you know. So it's really about developing. I'm learning myself. I'm gaining confidence in myself. I'm learning how to work with others. I'm learning, so many different nuances that I can teach you, but you're getting you're getting it in real time, you know. So that's why I love sports, not just football, but all sports, because all those elements that you get from playing the sport.
Look, so I'm gonna twist this a little bit because as you spoke from your role in player development, in order for men and fathers to excel, we need the right environment on many occasions. And so, in this concept or idea of a sanctuary slash father's haven for men, how do you create an ecosystem or culture where they can belong, they have hope, they feel valued? How do you create that development in the work that you do with a call to man and the work that you do for yourself?
Uh, I believe that, you know, part of our programming is, even when we look at happiness, right? People put a lot of stake on happiness, and happiness is really progression, right? I'm happy when I'm progressing. It could be towards a goal, it could be in life, it could be, the progression of my relationship, my kids are growing, the things around me are growing, right? Um, but when we look at it for most men, and the worst thing for men to do is to get lost in their own head, right? Whether that's from trauma, whether that's their have stagnation, whether that things aren't moving. The young folk call it, you ain't got no motion, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to have some motion going. You got to have some things going. And what happens for most men is they don't understand um, that you got seasons in life, right? In the winter, don't nothing grow like that. You got some seasons that you don't have winter, right? And some times where life slows you down. It might even knock you back, right? But not living there, not staying there, not living in that state where you feel like you don't have no motion or that you can't have motion again, right? So if we could develop something where men could see their progression, right? It could be small wins. It could be losing 5 pounds, right? It could be, oh, I went to the doctor this week. It could be, I made a new relation. It could be something, but not to say you always got to be, moving forward, but to be able to, because I believe in tracking development. They do it in school, right? They do it at work, right? Whether you got certain goals you got to meet, in grades, you got to go to from first grade to second grade to third grade, right? We've been kind of programmed to move forward, right? So when we get older, though, when we get out of the school frame, we got to start building that framework for our own lives. So if we're working with a group of men, how can I help you get from A to B? I don't want you to get from A to Z, just from A to B. It could be A to lowercase a,
Right,
right?
right.
Because it's a process. And again, this is a journey that we're on, right, Kelly? Like this ain't nothing, ain't not we're all unfinished. We all got things that we working on. Everybody's has their own struggles and battles, but we're saying, you know, it doesn't really matter where you are right now, right? You don't have to stay there. And some men have lost hope. Some men have been, like I said, have not healed, and they're only, I guess, how you ever heard, coming from the city, man. This is all I know.
Yep.
It's all I know, right? And I told you before, if I'm just recycling that old bad information, it's hard for me to open up my eyes to new possibilities. So if we could just take you from A to B and just go through that process, then we could go from B to C. And that process may take years. This ain't a tomorrow. This ain't, so social media make you think everything fast. It might take time to unravel some of that stuff, to peel back some of those layers. But if we could just move you along and help you progress, right? Help you to heal. Man, do you know what happened if we had a group of men that heal? What it do to their families, to their communities, to their children that heal, that grow? We looking at a different world, a different city, a different state, a different country. If we can heal, you know what I mean? And it's important, man. Because if we're healing as men, as fathers, as community leaders, oh man, what is that going to do to the people that's behind us, right? The people that's counting on us. You get what I'm saying? If we're
Oh,
better,
I definitely was
yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah. So just in working that metric, man, I know a lot of men dealing with. Okay, let's work on the healing. And I know you just right along your alley, man. Let's work on that. Let's hear your story. Let's get it out. Let's wrestle with it. Let's look at it different ways. Let's have some empathy for the people that you may blame in a certain scenario, because they might have had it bad too, right?
Yep.
The moment that
It
I start,
immediately,
yeah, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
now I didn't mean to cut you off, but you immediately made me think of Ray's story,
Yeah, yeah.
Ray Lewis,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
His dad wasn't there. And so, but his dad wasn't there because his dad's dad wasn't there.
Right.
And it stopped with Ray. Ray was hot because he was waiting, waiting. Dad never showed up.
Hmm.
His dad was down here actually in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time. Ray was in Florida. Long story short, they broke that cycle because Ray finally figured out that his dad went through the same thing he went through. They worked through that relationship and they end up, dad healed, Ray started healing,
Hmm.
and so it changed the perspective for Ray's kids because you've seen that healing process.
Absolutely. Think about that for a second. Like, imagine if Ray had not decided to not have empathy for his father and even understand his father's story, to say, nah, I made it, Pop, I don't need you, I'll take care, I don't need. Imagine that. I even, you know like, even with Floyd Mayweather, his whole family, his father
Right.
boxing, his uncle boxing. There was a time in Floyd Mayweather's life he was beefing with his dad, even though his dad was
Yep.
already there. His uncle had to pull him aside and really, that's still your father. You know what I mean? Regardless, if you wouldn't be boxing if it wasn't for him.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like taking a step back, because let's be real, man. some of the most pain that we feel is at the hands of men that we loved, right? At the hands of our father sometimes. That's some of the deepest pain. Hey, yeah, you could hurt romantically, right? But Luke, but having that father pain, man, listen. But once you heal from that, oh man, the amount of growth that you can have, brother. The amount of, again, we talk about the world opening up. You seeing different colors now, right?
Right.
The sky a different color blue, you know. It's it's so refreshing to have that weight off you. You know what I mean? And we always talk about it. The forgiveness is really for you. It ain't even for your dad, it's for you.
Exactly.
So definitely.
Look, and those are the things that as we do the fatherhood work, we do the relationship work, we do the mental health work, the healing work. Once we understand if we create the environment through building a relationship, creating trust, encouraging vulnerability, and as I share my story, as Paul shares his story, I'm not commenting on what's right or wrong to Paul. I'm commenting on my experience with the same thing. And in doing so is where the magic happens because healing happens in community, not individually. And we live in what's really an individualistic society. And so as we move away from the power of being integrated to maneuver through this healing journey together, we thus empower the next 3 generations, which then moves the next 4 generations. So we 7 generations in the future. And if trauma can be passed down, healing can definitely be passed down. And so everything you just said is something for everybody to not just listen to, but allow to marinate into your DNA because how we respond, notice I said respond and not react, is what we give to all those around us to be able to use the power of choice, to use response and not reaction. But both of them are cultivated through our experiences and our exposure. So, I mean, that was powerful. Like, so with that, let me ask you this, Paul. What are you most grateful for in your work and in your calling as a father and a communal and adoptive father?
Um, you know, I'm thankful. I know this might sound crazy, for a sound mind, man. You feel me?
I do.
I know that
I do.
listen, I'm thankful for a sound mind, man, that I can see multiple perspectives, that I can understand multiple walks of life, that I can understand the pain on a lot of levels, right? You know, and be able to have empathy for people's situation, right? Because sometimes you could just paint it with a broad brush and be like, man, he ain't got it. He ain't just there. But nah, I really want to dive deeper. I really want to understand because not everybody's going to have that same level of understanding, the same level of wisdom, same level of empathy or empathy at all. So just being able to have that, I think our Father has given us, our godly Father has given us um, all different gifts and talents, but him being able to give me a sound mind to be able to do the work, to have a passion for the work and people, right?
Mhm.
Is something that I cherish, that I'm grateful for, because not everybody has that same understanding, right? We sometimes we go about them every day, and you're like, man, they just not it ain't clicking for them, you know. But you got to be patient, right? And sometimes people get it when they get it, sometimes they never get it, right? It's not up to us to decide, but it's to still impart that. I saw something. I think Will Smith said it. He said, everybody needs love and kindness. Everybody needs
Hmm.
kindness, and I'm thankful that God has given me that love and kindness to give, because you got to have it to give it. You know,
Indeed.
so I'm grateful for that. Absolutely.
And to your point, is divine, right? If I'm sitting here having a conversation, encouraging with the expectation that you're going to listen to what, no, I should just be asking questions because you are the master of yourself. We have agency over ourselves. And although I want things to go a certain way for somebody, ultimately, whether it's Paul, my daughter, a son, whoever, they have to follow the path that is going to be most beneficial and rewarding to them. And as a parent, or if I'm a parent, my responsibility is to give you all these different experiences so you choose the most appropriate one for yourself. And that's what sometimes we forget. Oh, I gave you this advice. And yeah, I want you to hear the advice so you have options,
Right.
if you will, right? And I understand my run is gone. Now I want what's best for you. I have to trust that we've given you all the tools you need to make critical decisions and problem solve. And then if it doesn't go the way you wanted it to go, you have enough wherewithal to understand, okay, I'm going to regroup. This is what I've been taught. And so this is my process or problem solving methodology that'll help me arrive where I'm supposed to go, which is our ultimate goal. Because eventually we're not going to be here. Did we provide you with the appropriate tools to navigate life when we pass on? And even when we pass on, if you look at it from a DNA standpoint, we still exist through our children.
Yep. Definitely.
Man, so wow. So we coming to the close. Paul, do me a favor. Give the men, the fathers, any young person that may be watching, your call to action to create sanctuaries of healing for men and fathers so that it can be passed down generationally to their daughters, sons, and community.
One of the biggest pieces that helped me become successful is learning from others that have made it where I want to go, right? Um, you know, when I sit back and I look at it, and we can learn from someone through a book, we can learn from someone through their YouTube, YouTube University, right? We can learn from mentors, coaches. When I'm thinking about what I want to do, what I want to be, what space I want to be in, I want us to be vulnerable enough to seek that information from a person. And like again, you don't have to know them personally. It's better if you do, right? But the advice that I would give is learn from another person, especially for fathers, from another man who who has who is where you want to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Learn his story, learn what he went through, learn his mindset now and the different things that he had to overcome. And if I can build a collection of that, I'm gonna be a different man coming out of that. But I gotta expose myself to new information. It could be reading, it could be video, it could be in person, but I gotta expose myself to new information and new people. Because if I'm around the same people doing the same thing, listening, digesting the same stuff, I'm not going to be any different, right?
Yep.
The call to action. I would say go and find a mentor, right? That's the broader call to action, but find somebody that you really admire and learn everything about them. Learn their story, learn their pitfalls, and learn their way of thinking. And if you can incorporate that, that's going to lead you on that path to healing. It's going to lead you on that path to being better for your family. Because I'm not a great father because I just woke up, decided I want to be. Because I learned from other great fathers. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a great speaker because I woke up and said, I could talk. I had to learn from other great speakers, right? And once I decided to invest in that information, I became better, right? And then I could pass that down. So definitely.
So you just led them to another of your skill sets, which is speaking. So let them know how they can follow you, find you, support you.
Yeah. No, you can find me at on Instagram, on everything really, Power Coach Paul. If you want to email me, it's paul@cultivating.org. I'm not hard to find. Everybody these days you pull up their stuff. So Power Coach Paul on pretty much all of my
Peace, blessings, and elevation. We will bring you inspiring stories, expert insight, and practical tools and information to support you types in embracing our authentic selves. We can pave the way for a brighter future for ourselves and our children. Empower, heal, and support fathers and men on their journey. I'm your host, Kelly Little, aka the Village King. Welcome to the Father's Haven.